Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. You know, 3-4 years on, you still see the same old responses, excuses, and misunderstandings and ignorance of these people that come along and maybe take a look at Flat Earth, but don't really look and don't really listen and don't really think. They believe they can come along with the same old things, bits and pieces of information and what would you call it? Explanations about the globe Earth model that they believe to be true and have never really questioned. And then they assume that the flat earther is being ignorant, stupid, doesn't understand, etc., etc. I mean, do I have to preface every single video with all the stuff that's gone through my head and I've thought about and experimented with? You know, that's okay. The whole gravity thing, density, relative density, gravity, weight, mass, acceleration, what have you. Look at it like this. The chicken and egg. Yeah, the chicken and egg scenario. It's one of those things. These are a fact of life. There are chickens and there are eggs. And chickens make eggs and eggs make chickens. But the conundrum is, what came first, or what causes what? Yeah, so does the egg cause the chicken to become a thing, or did the chicken, you know, what was the original cause, the chicken or the egg? Yeah, so the same applies to anything we can see that we might use the terms gravity for, or acceleration. You know, again, the cause, we describe, okay, we describe what we see, we describe the observations of a mass, a dense mass falling in a less dense medium, and a light mass rising in a more dense medium. Okay, that's why I use the terms relative density. I don't necessarily like to use the word buoyancy because you know, it has kind of different connotations. It's a weird one because again, but what is causing the buoyancy? People will say that gravity causes buoyancy. Now I get the concept. We all understand that if gravity is pushing down on the water, it pushes something in the less dense in the water, pushes that up. Okay, buoyancy. Yeah, but you know, these are not forces that we can measure. Yes, there is a force going on when you introduce a mass, whether it be a light mass or a dense mass, to a medium. Yeah, so you've got your relative density, that's it. And you can put these things in containers and more containers, and then you can weigh them in the medium of air, and then you can put them in more containers. So we get accused of stopping thinking because we're just considering the basic elements, the medium, for example, air or water or a liquid or whatever. So yeah, with the mediums we are stuck with liquids and gases, but of course masses are of a fixed density, so of course you get this downward force that you don't get an equivalent upward force because you're always dealing with something that isn't as something that, for example, a helium balloon is is a mass, but it's a lighter mass than the medium of air if it goes up. But that, in comparison to a lead ball, for example, that will just whoop, fall through the air, a helium balloon doesn't have that much upward force as the downward force associated with a lead balloon in the medium of air. Yeah, because a helium balloon is, although it's a light mass, it's using a gas to fill it. So the difference between the light mass of a helium balloon and the medium of air isn't that much compared to the massive density of anything else that's heavy that you drop through the medium of air. Yeah, so it's just, you've got to think about these things in that case. But we get accused, the flat earther gets accused of not thinking beyond that. And of course the globe earther thinks that they have all the answers because everything's been wrapped up in a globe, and then boop, it's in infinite space going around the sun. But that's it, that's as far as that goes. You're left with the question hanging over you, where does space end? Or okay, you just have to accept infinite space as that medium for anything that has mass. And you know, gravity being the catch-all for all of it. So you know, it's still, you don't get a final answer, you just get this apparent conclusion that leads you to perceive why you might be stuck to an imaginary ball, and because mass, gravity, and that applies to everything else that we see in the sky, blah blah blah, and you know that. But that's as far as it goes, and it's all assumptions. There's still no proof of the cause. Yeah, like the chicken and egg. Yeah, there's no proof. We can't prove what came first, apart from knowing that these were somehow created. You could assume evolution if you wanted, but you can't prove that. And where did the evolution start? You can't. You just, you know, these are unanswerable questions. They are conundrums, which we can only attach descriptions to. So the same goes for the mathematics that is attached to you know, whatever we see, you know, F equals ma and the G equations, blah blah blah. They're all just descriptions of what we see, but you can't, you know, once something is fallen through the air and then it goes into the medium of water, and there is this buoyancy acting on it, you can't measure the opposing force, the opposing buoyant force, can you? It just becomes something that, for example, the egg in the water or the salt water, it just becomes less dense or more of an equal density to that medium. So it's less heavy in that medium. There's less of an acceleration down in that medium until you reach zero. So it's all understood that the equations can lead you to, because you still assume gravity is acting on an egg in the medium of water, you arrive at a net force of zero, but you can't measure these so-called or alleged opposing forces acting on the egg. There's nothing pulling and pushing it or squishing it. It is just at an equilibrium. And of course you can describe that, you can start at zero, or you can arrive at zero by assuming a force, a downward force in the first place. But you cannot measure these any forces that you assume. Yeah? No, it doesn't matter how many numbers you throw at it. And you know, so I can see why people believe that, you know, the heavier something, which is totally against all physics, all right? But in order to believe that oceans will, or anything, sticks to a spherical Earth, you actually, on the fundamental level, you have to believe that the heavier something is, the more easily it will stick in opposite directions to anything else that's heavy or all around the ball. This is something that we never ever find in physics or science. Yes, you can imagine it and you can perceive it because of the equations, But it's not, even magnets don't behave in that way. There is no physics in this world that will actually have that happen, that the heavier something is, the more easily it sticks to something else in opposite directions. Yeah, but of course, the equations can lead you to perceive this, because of course what they do is they convert, they say weight is caused by gravity, rather than saying weight, weight causes gravity. They say gravity causes weight, rather than saying weight is the actual cause of gravity. Yeah, you can say it either way you like. You can describe it any way you like. But with the mathematical formulas that translate weight into newtons, yeah? You see, if something weighs 1 kilogram, why not just call it 1 kilogram of force? I mean, you can do, actually, yeah, and say that it has an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second when you drop it through the air, right? Yeah, you can call it 1 kilogram of force, but no! They tell you to call that 1 kilogram of force newtons. So it's no different from translating dollars into a lesser currency like I don't know, lira or something. So you got $1 equals, for example, 10 lira. It's the same value, yeah. It's the, you know, a kilogram is still a kilogram of mass, and it's still going to behave in the same way no matter what numbers you attach to it. So of course you get a kilogram, which creates a kilogram of force. When it's at rest, just lying on the ground, whatever like that, it weighs a kilogram in the medium of air. But they go ahead and call it newtons. And of course, a newton is roughly 10 newtons per kilogram. Of course, they call a newton, 10 newtons are based on the rate of acceleration, 9.8 meters per second. So that's why they call it 10. But also all you're doing is adding a 0 to the 1 kilogram and calling it newtons. It's just a translation of weight, no different to translating a currency. But because they've done that and made you think of it as a force that is measured in a different way to it just being a kilogram, then you have this perception that the more mass something is, so the larger an ocean is, the more attractive force it has. So an ocean of or water, for example, of 10 kilograms is going to be 100 newtons of force acting on it. Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a translation of the mass measured as a weight in the metric system, and then again doing another translation into newtons, sticking on a 0 and imagining that this translation, putting an extra 0 on it, is caused by an external force. Another external force. It's still the same force that you have from putting a mass in a less dense medium. Nothing happens if you've got nothing there. Yeah? Yeah, and of course scientists understand this. They understand that you can't, the act of observing something and measuring something is a cause and effect kind of scenario. Yeah? They get that, they understand that. So it's not until you set out to measure it and observe it that something actually happens, is it? So, no, flat earthers have not stopped thinking at the limited level of relative density, or if you want to call it buoyancy and whatever, that's fine. Yeah? They just understand and have thought it all through, that at the end of the day, you still, no matter how you want to describe it, just so you can imagine that it's possible to stick to a spinning ball, it still doesn't give you any answers to the fundamental root cause, even though you believe it does. And that's your problem, Globers. Yeah, you assume you have the answers, but you still don't have a real cause. You've just been given an assumed cause. But really you're going no further than a description, but then continuing this assumption throughout all the mediums, that you continue to have this downward force forever. And then you assume that because you can draw a circle, yes, it's perfectly understood that if you draw a circle, then down, anywhere around the edge of that circle, then down is towards the center of that circle. And if you assume that that circle is a mass, then down becomes the center. You know, we get it. It's not rocket science. Yeah? But it's just an interpretation. It's just a perception. And it is a perception deception to have you believe that this is the only way to see it as, or to see the Earth. Yeah? That's the thing. And of course, once you understand that the whole space thing is, we've been lied to, or you know, we've been given false ideas about the nature of space and where we are, yeah, then you understand, then you can put it into perspective, and then you can realize that all you can do. Hello? Yeah. Yes, I'm 5 minutes away. Yeah, alright, cheers. Yeah. So come on. Globers. The flat earther understands you because we were there once, but we endeavoured to go beyond it and see if it's possible to actually prove the assumptions, and it's not. So we came to terms with that, but you guys coming along and presuming that we're stupid and ignorant, and even these, I've got this bloody teacher who, you know, the teachers are programmed to program the kids. Don't you understand? Yeah? You think you're smart because you teach kids to go through a step-by-step process to reach certain conclusions, but giving the kids this illusion that they're working it out for themselves. When they're not, you're programming them in a step-by-step process to arrive at a desirable conclusion that you want them to arrive at. It's guided mind control. It is mind control, and it's brainwashing. Because if they come up with any alternatives to what the goal you're trying to get them to, then you fail them, don't you? They're not given marks for going against the grain, or even just realizing that what you're teaching them is just a single-minded approach to perceiving our reality and interpreting and translating our reality into the language that you want them to use. So, I hope some of you numbskulls out there with globe heads on will get it. Thank you very much.